Okay, Sister April? Hello? We ready to go? All right, y'all, welcome. We do apologize. Say thanks to patients. You know, things happen when you're electronic. That's what happened when interesting show for you. Tell somebody who was waiting, and we don't say, hey, WPB for the panel. We're going to put together a intelligent group of leaders to discuss the you think we Living Words Election Night Analysis and Watch Party. And your moderator, Darnell Johnson, servant Living Word Ministries Cathedral in Baltimore, Maryland. The purpose of gathering is to bring a panel of leaders together for the purpose of, number one, collaboration, to give their insight and analysis on the national presidential election, as well as the special elections that are taking place within their jurisdiction. We would like to thank Sister and our stream tonight. Again, let me do a program note before we get started that because I wanted to make sure that we had a diverse panel. There were several attempts to create a diverse panel through invitations to several females who had declined for reasons of prior commitments or just decline at this time. So I wanted to put that disclaimer out in case you look at the panel and say, why didn't they have us? We tried, and we're going to do this again later, full time, ahead of time, to make sure that we have a balanced panel. But tonight, analysis, we have Apostle David Brown, the founding apostle of Living and attorney at law. From Atlanta, Georgia, Apostle Darrell Winston, pastor of the Greater Works Assembly in Atlanta, Georgia. And then we have Bishop Terrence Raleigh from Houston, Texas, the CEO of Terrence Raleigh Ministries. So here's how it's going to work. Discuss the important jurisdictions. First 30 minutes there, where elections like Florida, and then the election in started. If you can, forward to share all of our guests. Thank you, Bishop Terrence Raleigh. Make sure, want to make sure that we've got okay, Apostle David. Apostle Winston. I'm gonna go down the list. All up, and I'm sitting here, watching. Looks like is being led by Joe Biden at this time in Texas. It's tight. That's why I wanted Bishop Raleigh on to talk about the state of Texas. And so as soon as our guest comes on, we're to make sure that they come up, unless I cannot hear them. I think my mic is on. My mic is.
Okay, we have Attorney Bates and Bishop.
Yes, Attorney Alvin Bates is on. Yeah. Yes,
Yes, there are.
we're just waiting. Thank you for your patience. We're looking at the any, but we value our panel's time. Attorney Bates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Bishop. How are you?
Thank you.
Yes, you have Attorney Bates and
Oh,
Apostle Winston.
Attorney Bates,
Yeah.
Apostle Winston, Attorney Bates.
Yes, sir.
How are you
Good
doing,
evening,
sir?
everyone.
Thank you so.
Good evening,
Thank you so
Bishop.
much. I hear a little feedback. I don't know. Is that WPB? I hear a little feedback. I want to say thank you so much for your patience and welcome to our election analysis. And as we've been sitting here with you first, and thank you again for your time. Attorney Bates is with Bates and Garcia, attorney at law here in Baltimore, one of our finest attorneys. Let's go local. There's been a reported 55%, at least the last time I checked, I'm sure it's up now. Pre-election day turnout, like 2.2 million people voted in advance in Maryland. What, in your opinion, what does that speak to?
Well, I think it speaks to, first of all, I want to say good evening to you and everyone else, Bishop, to all your viewers and listeners. You know, I just want to sing now it speaks to Donald Trump. I think it speaks to everyone understanding that, their Trump has not been anything that he promised to be, but I think he's been what we thought he would be, meaning we within the Black community. I think it just states, and me are worried about their future, the way he's handled the country, the way he's acted, and the way he's dealt with the coronavirus. To one.
So comes to our local politics. Corruption, share of corrupted. Now in Baltimore, profile mayor's race, and the leading candidate to win, Brandon Scott, as a Democrat in a blue state. How do you see Shannon Wright and who are running Brandon Faring in this race? Do you think it's just a? Do you think? I'll tell you why. I was out in the polls today, just driving around, and people were voting. Lines still 4 or 5 o'clock. I mean, just as long as they were last week. And I think it's been a giving in local politics that the Democrat is going to win because it's a blue state. Do you think it's any chance that we will flip from blue to red or to independent during this mayoral election?
Well, it's interesting because I think a couple things are at play here. They normally vote for the Democrat. The Democratic machine is very strong. Brandon Scott, recently received the endorsement of the #1 challenger, who he edged out.
I think we
in
lost
the primary.
Attorney Bates.
And so, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can. Yes, now I can.
Okay. Well, I think what happened is the machine here is very strong. I think we also are seeing that former Mayor Sheila Dixon, who Brandon Scott beat out in the primary, endorsed him. So it does. Brandon Scott has a very strong. He's in a strong position. I don't see Miss Wright on the Republican Party beating him out. However, if there's anybody who has a shot, I think Bob Wallace has put himself in a position to be talked about. He's going at it, the demographic of voters that tend to city, the older voter, the voters who have sick of the crime, and the voters who will look at him as a steady hand, not as, you know, a change in such a young direction that the voters don't feel comfortable with. I think Bob Wallace has a very well-funded campaign that supports greatly. However, I still see at the end Mr. Scott potentially pulling it off, but I wouldn't be shocked if he'd be very close, though, to be honest. I think here the difference is that so many people aren't even looking at the mayoral race. They're looking straight at the presidential race, and they're not even going to look for anybody that's an independent. They're only voting for a Democrat.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting, because I did hear today that the mayoral race has gotten comparatively very little play in Maryland and Baltimore, rather, very little coverage other than the nightly news, because the country is looking at the presidential race. Let me ask you this. Something shocking to me happened. You may have seen this before. I read today, I think it was today, where Zeke Cohen, council person, just endorsed a Green Party candidate for the seat of Robert Stokes, who acted in the Perez, P-A-Z. Talk about that. That's strange. What's behind that, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think Zeke Cohen is kind of his own person. I think Franca, I believe is her first name. She is a progressive. I think by her being a progressive and Zeke Cohen, he's also a progressive, had something to do with it. I think Zeke was different, but I believe at the heart of it is I think they were just friends. My understanding is that he's known this young lady for 10, 12 years when they were teachers and they would take students out on trips. I think he knew her heart. I think he just felt that this is my friend, and this is not about politics, but this is about friendship and about what he felt Baltimore needed. It's highly controversial, but I think that winning, if there's an outside candidate, potentially be her. From what I've seen, Mr. Stokes, who's the city council member, he hasn't been getting the same sort of support that I had expected him to receive from a number of the Democrats. I think the simple fact that he's as close as he is to the current mayor, Jack Young, may have actually hurt him. So, he may actually be seen as part of the system and that good old network that, it seems to me that some of Baltimore no longer wants to be a part of.
Because I'm the host and the moderator and has to stay neutral, I'm going to let this segment fly from me, because, like I said, he is in our district of our church. So so let me ask you this: let's say if election, a Republican work a pretty much Democratic city council.
Hello?
Yeah, did you hear, attorney?
No, I didn't hear the question.
I said
I didn't hear the question.
I said if Bob Wallace, who is Republican, happens to win the race, and so he has to work with a pretty much Democratic government in Baltimore. How do you think that will work? Will we get anything done, or will it always be the infighting because of opposite sides of the aisle?
Well, I think, Bob Wallace is an independent. I think he used to be a Democrat beforehand. I think Bob Wallace would do a fine job. I think he has a number of ideas he wants to facilitate. My question is, and what I always hear, and I don't know the answer to this, my question is, a lot of times people don't always understand how Baltimore city government works. It's a little different from understanding. You know, we are just talking about Councilman Stokes. You know, I think one of the things that's very interesting is that he's been in government for a while. So the argument is that he understands, you know, how the system works and how he can make it work for his constituents. Where the other young lady he's running against hasn't been in it, does she really understand how it works? So you could make that same argument against Bob Wallace. He's, you know, been in the biz, totally and truly understanding the way that Baltimore city government works. I don't really think that he would have a problem. I think he would do the things he needs to. In Baltimore, you have a strong by the mayor. So the mayor has a lot of power, you know, and I don't really foresee any problem working with everybody if Mr. West.
So you think, even as, and you're right, I mean, an independent, that it would be an amendable, by Baltimore being a machine, as mentioned before, and pretty democratic machine. So you believe that he could cross the aisle and vice versa, and we can move the city forward? Because I think that has to be on all of our radar, with the blight, with the vacant houses, with the murder rate, with the just boarded up, empty houses, unemployment. Moving the city forward, I think, should be at the top of everybody's, from city council to president of city council to mayor. Moving the city forward.
Hello.
For the people. And that's kind of why I asked that question. Or would, in bureaucracy and fighting, because like kind of like similar, attorney, what on a different level, what happened when we had the first, well, in my time, the first Republican government, until some people retired, there was a fighting. Governor and you know, the speaker and the whip and all of that. So you believe we won't get to that degree, that whoever becomes mayor will be able to work with the government to move the city forward?
I think Ivan Bates got knocked off,
Okay.
but we have
And
Apostle Winston.
Apostle Winston,
Yes,
can you hear me, sir?
I can. I can hear you.
How are you doing, sir?
Doing great. How about yourself this evening?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for your technology. Apostle Darrell Winston is the pastor of Greater Works Assembly Ministries in Atlanta, Georgia, and I wanted him to come on in particular to talk about some of the local politics that's taking place in Georgia. You've got some local elections, Apostle, that have the ear and the eye of the nation. Number one, kind of like Georgia's, kind of like Texas. And let me ask you this question. Do you see Georgia through this election perhaps flipping? We know for at least several decades, it's been a solid Republican state, with the immigration or migration rather of people from up the north and the demographics changing. Do you believe this election?
Yeah, for the last 4 years, And the last 2 years, it came very close, and by all indication, unless they try some games and tricks, many people are expecting Georgia to flip. Now it's been tight, it's been close. Uh, Record turnout, record early voting. Uh, it's on. It is believed by the Democratic Party that Georgia has now become the swing state. Hence, uh, President Obama came back on the eve of the election. Sunday, Kamala Harris came, and that was her second time in 5 days. And it has gotten the attention of the nation because not just and because of the Senate race, the Senate race, which will um, be historic. It looks like
Let's talk about that.
Dr. Raphael,
One of the things I want to
for sure he's going to
that's
be in the runoff. Uh, the Republicans that running against him, past Dr. Warnock is running against Joe Lieberman's son, interestingly enough, and a crowded field of candidates. But arguably, Warnock ran one of the best campaigns in terms of in this COVID, in the COVID, was a negative. He didn't run a negative campaign at all. And now I'm sure once he makes it into the run, his Republican counterparts are going to be gunning and hitting at him pretty hard. But he certainly has fitted himself well, and with the way that his campaign, the ads, excellent.
he seems to have the backing
It
of the
has been
Democratic Party,
stated
which is
that
across the country, that has put quite a bit of money into his campaign also.
oh yeah, he raised in excess of 40 plus million. It has been said that be, he was the perfect, not necessarily because there's a gentleman who was a former state elected official who was an Obama appointee, worked under uh, the Secretary, the former Attorney General Eric Holder, and who had a stellar military background. He did not get their backing. Uh, but in terms of, I see as a strategy that by backing Dr. Warnock in this pandemic, they can mobilize the Black church. So, in recent weeks, a lot of the faith leaders have stepped up and continued to uh, push. But he has a major ad buy everywhere, you know. So, from a strategic perspective, he has run an excellent campaign on every level.
Do you think it helps that he's the pastor of the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church where Dr. King preached? Do you think that that's given him a push, or is just his political savvy alone?
Yeah, I think that is the catalyst more than anything. Even how he has branded himself around the country speaking, and that Dr. King is uh, and the historical nature of Ebenezer has served him well, and especially in its in many of the marketing and the brochures, when people hear that, they are moved by that. But because he's never held office, he was able to get the National Party to back him, and go, as opposed to, even I thought that they would go with Lieberman's son. It started out kind of sputtering because I said I was assuming, we're talking about Joe Lieberman's former. He ran for vice president. I think he was on the Kerry ticket, I think, and they tried to get him, and all of a sudden Warnock just started rising in a crowded field, and they tried to get Lieberman's son to drop out, as well as the other gentleman, in an effort to uh, get more votes for Dr. Warnock. So it looks like it's certainly he has the Democratic nominee, no question, and so he'll go off with either Collins or Kelly. I can't think of her name.
Kimberly, with
Kelly Lover. She owns a WNBA.
Kelly
team.
Loeffler, I think it is.
Name. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let me ask you this, and what we're going to do, because we're having some technical difficulty, and I appreciate our guesses. You all have been just wonderful, but I dare not tie up your entire night. And these things happen, these things do happen. But and I appreciate your and all of the guests, their tolerance with us. But I want to make sure when we do these, it's excellent. The volume is excellent. So I'm going to end this in just a few minutes. And again, I want to thank all of our networks, WPB, for even allowing us to do this forum for the first time. Let me ask you this. There's another race that I wanted to talk to you about, Jonathan Wallace. When we talk about Georgia, race between Wallace, which is a Democrat, running against Republican Marcus Whitner. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, running for the U.S. Senate seat. It's a very contentious race. What can you tell us about that race?
And this is who? Not in Georgia.
In Georgia, yeah. John Wallace.
I'm not familiar. What part of Georgia is this? Because you got John Ossoff, who's running against David Perdue. You have Dr. Warnock,